The arrow didn't care about reputation. It didn't care that the man it was about to find had ruled the most powerful kingdom in Europe. It found him anyway. October 14th, 1066, a hill in the south of England. A king stands in the middle of a battlefield that is already lost. His banner still waves. His bodyguard dies one by one, keeping him upright. Then the line breaks. What happens in the next 60 seconds will erase an entire civilization, a language, a ruling class. 500 years of English identity, gone before sunset, and it started with a dead king who left no heir. January 5th, 1066, Westminster. King Edward of England takes his last breath. No son, no clear heir, no plan. In one night, the most coveted throne in Europe becomes an open wound. 3 men smell blood simultaneously from 3 different directions. Harold Godwinson moves first, the most powerful nobleman in England, commander of its armies. By morning, he is already crowned. Fast, decisive, and almost certainly illegal. Across the Channel, William of Normandy reads the news and goes very still. He had been promised that throne. He begins building ships. In the north, Harold Hardrada of Norway sharpens his axe, his own claim, his own fleet, a reputation that makes grown men change their routes at sea. Harold now faces an impossible calculation: 2 invasions, 2 directions, 1 kingdom, 1 army that cannot be in 2 places at once. He has 9 months to prepare. He will need every single day, and he will still almost get it right. September 1066. England is holding its breath. All summer, Harold has kept his army on the southern coast, watching the Channel. William's fleet sits in Normandy, waiting for wind. For weeks, nothing moves. The English fyrd, the citizen soldiers who form the bulk of Harold's force, cannot stay in the field forever. They have farms, harvests, families. In early September, Harold makes a painful decision. He stands the army down and sends the men home. 5 days later, the wind changes. Harold Hardrada lands in the north with 300 ships and 9,000 men. He is not a duke with a legal argument. He is a Viking warlord who has spent 30 years fighting from Constantinople to the Arctic Circle. He burns York in 48 hours. The local English earls march out to stop him and are destroyed in less than an hour. Harold gets the news and makes a decision that will define the next 1,000 years. He marches north, immediately, 300 kilometers in 4 days, on foot, in autumn. He doesn't wait for stragglers. He doesn't consolidate. He moves at a pace that breaks weaker men. By the time he reaches Yorkshire, his army is smaller. But what remains is the sharpest instrument in England. At Stamford Bridge, Harold catches Hardrada completely off guard. The Norwegians are split across a river, half without armor, in the September heat. A single Norse warrior holds the bridge alone, killing dozens, before someone paddles underneath and drives a spear through the planks. What follows is not a battle. It is a demolition. Hardrada dies with an arrow in his throat. Of 300 ships, only 24 sail home. Harold stands on a field covered in Norse dead, his army exhausted and euphoric. Then a messenger arrives from the south. William landed 3 days ago. 7,000 men, hundreds of horses. He is already burning Harold's own ancestral heartland, village by village, daring the king to come south and stop him. Harold doesn't pause. He turns his exhausted army around and marches south at the same brutal pace. His brother Gurth makes the case clearly. Let me lead the army. You stay back, gather fresh troops. If I lose, you still have a king." Harold refuses. No one knows exactly why. Pride, perhaps. Or the cold calculation that every extra day William burns Sussex is another community lost to him. Either way, the decision cannot be unmade. The army that arrives near Hastings on October 13th is a ghost of itself. Tired men with healing wounds, carrying weapons notched from the last battle, marching toward a fresh Norman force that has had 2 weeks to choose its ground. Harold picks a hill, digs in, and waits. It is the right instinct, but instinct alone will not be enough. Dawn, October 14th. The English stand shoulder to shoulder on Senlac Hill. Shield wall. 700 meters of overlapping wood and iron across the crest. Behind it, housecarls with 2-handed axes capable of splitting a horse and rider in a single stroke. In front, a steep slope, marshy flanks, and nothing but English steel waiting for anyone who climbs. William looks up and sees the problem immediately. He cannot go around it. He cannot wait. Every extra day costs him horses, supplies, and time Harold uses to gather reinforcements. He crossed the channel with everything he had. There are no reserves. He has to go through that wall. He sends his archers first. They fire uphill into the shields. Almost nothing gets through. Arrows lose velocity climbing the slope. The archers run out and fall back, having achieved nothing. He sends his infantry. The housecarls work in pairs. One holds the line, the other swings axes at anything within reach. The Normans take catastrophic losses and fall back. He sends his cavalry. Horses cannot build momentum uphill against a solid wall. They wheel away bleeding. For 2 hours, William throws everything he has at that hill. For 2 hours, the English line does not move a meter. Inside the wall, something remarkable is happening. Many of these men are farmers who fight one season and harvest the next. But they rotate the front rank, pass water and weapons backward, absorb charge after charge with the efficiency of men who know that movement means death. Harold does not commit his reserves, does not counterattack. He is waiting for William to exhaust himself. It is the correct strategy. It is working. Then something happens that no one planned. On the left flank, a section of the Norman line breaks and runs. Genuine panic, or something that looks exactly like it. And the English on that flank, tasting victory after hours of desperate defense, break formation and chase them downhill. This is the moment Harold loses the battle. William sees it. What looks like a rout becomes an opportunity. The Norman cavalry wheels and cuts down the pursuing English in the open field. Away from the hill, away from the shield wall, away from everything that kept them alive. Whether the retreat was panic or a deliberate feint, historians have argued for 1,000 years. The truth died on that field. What is not in dispute is what came next. The shield wall had a gap. The gap is small. William doesn't need large. He pours cavalry through it like water through a crack in a dam. The shield wall begins to collapse from the inside. What was a fortress becomes a killing ground. Harold's housecarls close ranks. They form a tighter circle around the king's banner, the fighting man, still flying above the carnage. Every man who falls is replaced. The circle shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. The Norman archers receive a new order. Fire high, fire into the sky. Let gravity finish what direct shots cannot. A volley rises, hangs, falls. One arrow finds its mark. The king goes down. What exactly happens next is the most contested sequence in English history. The Bayeux Tapestry shows a man pulling an arrow from his eye. Some historians say Harold was cut down by knights who didn't even know who he was. Some say he fought on, wounded, until cavalry finished what the arrow started. It doesn't matter. What matters is the banner falls. The housecarls fight to the last man, literally. The professional corps of England's army dies on that hill around a king already dead, because that is what they swore to do. No retreat, no surrender, no negotiation. By late afternoon, it is over. William walks the field. He finds Harold eventually, identified not by his face, but by marks on his body that only his closest companions knew. England's last Anglo-Saxon king is buried near the shore he died defending. William rides toward London. He is not yet called the Conqueror. On this evening, he is simply a duke from Normandy who won a battle he had no guarantee of winning, on a hill he didn't choose, against a king who came within hours of stopping him. One arrow, one broken shield wall, one exhausted army that marched too far, too fast. That is all it took. Within 5 years, almost every English lord is dead, dispossessed, or in exile. William doesn't just conquer England, he replaces it. The language of the court becomes French. The language of the church becomes Latin. Old English, spoken for 5 centuries, is driven underground, where it spends 200 years mutating before it resurfaces as Middle English. The language you are hearing right now is, in part, a consequence of one afternoon in 1066. The Domesday Book, commissioned 20 years after the battle, surveys every piece of land in England. Of the great English landowners listed before the conquest, almost none remain. An entire ruling class, erased, replaced by Norman lords who had never set foot on English soil before the invasion. Historians call it the most complete transformation of a conquered society in European history. And it almost didn't happen. Harold had the better position, the better army, when rested. He destroyed one invasion force in 4 days that should have taken weeks. By almost any measure, he was the superior commander. He just ran out of time. 1 week of rest after Stamford Bridge in history looks completely different. One decision. His brothers offer to lead the army south, and William possibly never reaches London. Instead, a tired king made a tired decision on a hill in October. History's hinge moments are never decided by grand forces. They are decided by exhausted men making imperfect choices under impossible pressure, by an arrow that could have missed, by a shield wall that held for hours before it didn't, by the distance between almost and too late. Harold Godwinson died on that hill not knowing any of this. He died defending something that had already ceased to exist. This story is only the beginning. Subscribe to see what happens next.